Bienvenidos a Zona Deportiva y también a la gente en nuestras redes sociales en Producciones Deportivas. Hoy vamos a entrevistar, y en inglés por supuesto, a Herrera. Es un jugador que desde que se ha puesto la camiseta de la Selección Nacional de Guatemala nos ha ilusionado pues, con lo que ha aportado a la misma, además por su estatus de un jugador distinto y una estrella en la Major League Soccer. After a long while, finally your debut in Mateo Flores. How do you feel 24 hours after that game?
Yeah, it felt...
How are you?
It felt very... Well, first of all, the game felt very good.
Yeah.
Obviously a good result for us. Every game that we play here, we feel that we need to win.
Yeah.
So it was important to get the win. But yeah, I feel good. Physically, I feel very good. And yeah, finally I was able to get it done because the last couple times, unfortunately, I picked up injuries right before.
Yeah.
So I know there was a lot of talk about me not liking to play here, which was not the story at all.
Oh yeah.
I was always super excited to come play here, and at the last couple games I had 50 family members there, so
that's great.
Nobody wanted to play that game more than me, but yeah, it was good to finally get it done, and yeah, good win.
Talking about the game itself, everybody assumed before the game, and it's easy to jump to conclusions, that that's a must-win, and everybody was focusing on the Costa Rica game on Monday, which is going to be a great game.
Yeah.
Especially because both teams won fairly well on their first game in the Nations League. But it turned out to be a lot more difficult than people expected. And Nico's save, for instance, in the penalty, became a difference maker in the game.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, if Nico doesn't make that save, we're probably 2-2, and at that point anything can happen. So yeah, it was obviously a game we had to take care of, but at the same time in Concacaf right now, there's no team that you can overlook.
Yeah.
Every team is getting better. Every team has very good players who are playing in very good leagues. So Martinique was another one of those teams, and I think Guadalupe as well, Guyana, Suriname, all these teams have great players now. So you can't overlook any team, and it's just continuing to get more and more competitive.
Exactly. I'm going to go now to the beginning of your story and your link to Guatemala. How are you? What's your relationship, or what are your roots that make you eligible to play in Guatemala?
Yeah. So my dad was born and raised here.
Okay.
Him and all of his siblings. Well, I think he was about 15 years old when he finally was able to move to the U.S. full time.
Okay.
And him and my abuelita were able to get all their paperwork and all that stuff sorted. So yeah, he was.
So they legally moved to the U.S.
Yeah.
Okay, back then.
It was a struggle.
Because there's a lot of immigrants,
Yeah, it was a struggle though. It was definitely. I started to learn more about it now because I never really asked about it, but it was definitely a struggle, and they were back and forth for quite a few years. But yeah, all of them were finally able to get sorted over there when my dad was around 15, and then he has 3 siblings, so they were a little younger because he's the oldest one. And so yeah, that's my connection.
And they all went to there. I mean, all your generation was born in the U.S., all in New Mexico.
Yeah.
Okay.
So me and all my siblings were born and raised in New Mexico, and but yeah, all of my dad and all his siblings all live over there now.
Excellent. And did he talk much about Guatemala, and were you aware of Guatemala and the traditions here, or it was just like a thing way back? I mean, something that wouldn't come up too much in your family conversations growing up?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it came up too much. I think as a kid, you're not really very curious about your family's past and stuff, and I think that's the reason for me not being fluent in Spanish now, is because when I was a kid, my dad would be like, I can teach you Spanish, but
He tried
for sure, and I'd be like, you know what, why do I need to learn Spanish as a kid?
Yeah.
I wish he would have just spoken to me starting from a very young age, but obviously it was more our choice, and then now I'm like, I wish he would have spoke to us growing up, but no, it's good. Obviously we knew our roots were from here, and we took a vacation here when I was probably 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And so we saw everything, and
you went to Antigua, to the old
everything. I still remember the whole trip.
Great.
Even though I was very young. And then obviously the next 20 years I hadn't been back here at all until before the Gold Cup last year.
Yeah.
And so yeah, obviously it's great to be here now, and it took so long because I think, well, one, I was playing with the US, but also we didn't
with the US under 20 thing.
We didn't know this was an option.
Of course,
So once we finally knew it was an option, and everything else happened, and the rest is history.
And other players making the jump, like Rubio Rubin and Nathaniel Mendez, and it does make it easier for Darwin Lom. At the point, because since you were called to the under 20 US team, in various occasions. Was it difficult to make the choice? Because, I mean, you're a standout player in the MLS, so it's never out of the question that you might be called for the U.S. first team at some point.
Yeah.
Was it difficult to make that decision, taking that in mind?
Yeah, I think when it finally came down to it, it wasn't difficult.
Yeah.
But I think it was definitely a hard pill to swallow because there were a lot of players that were still getting called in that I knew I was just
better.
as good as,
Oh, yeah,
or
exactly.
if not better.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't ready to throw that away yet, you know? I've been with the US my whole career growing up, and it's sort of like, I always look at it, it's kind of like an ex-girlfriend, you know?
Yeah,
You're still talking to her. Just because this new girl comes in, like, you don't want to just give up on her right away.
And she's still there because you live there, so she's still around.
You loved her, you don't want to give up on her just right away, so you give her the benefit of the doubt. So, but yeah, well, once it came down to it, it was an easy decision.